And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. Thank you all for joining us so far. If you're joining us live on Wednesday evening, or if you're watching us afterwards as well, too, we appreciate you stopping in. Either way, it is finally that time of year. The NFL season is upon us. We got live NFL football coming up, and I, for one, can't wait. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host Kelsey. We've been waiting a long time for this one. This is arguably our favorite time of the year, but football is up. Let me phrase that. NFL football is back, and it is getting ready to get started, which means everyone to put on your tinfoil hats and start twisting away, because we got a lot of predictions and conspiracy theories, a little bit of everything leading into the season.
Yeah, I've been growing my anti-football beard here, it's been the off season, and I've really been hankering for some football since the end of the USFL championship game. So I've been waiting on this to come around for, well, it's been a couple weeks. It hasn't been that long. It's been since July 4th, but still, this has been waiting, been ready for this, and honestly, this is our favorite time where now we get to actually see football on Thursday. I mean, cannot wait for the Jaguars game. Granted, it's the Jaguars without Trevor Lawrence and anybody important, and it's the Raiders without anybody important except for Jarrett Stidham. Shout out Jarrett Stidham. Only guy that's going to be on the field that might even be a recognizable name, and even that to only half the audience probably. But yeah, it's going to be fun. So it's just glad to have football back.
Absolutely. And for those of you who weren't with us last year, we appreciate you for joining us now. Better late than never to come along. But what we're going to do here is for the next 5 weeks, each week we're going to be breaking down divisions. So we'll go north and north, south and south, east and east, west and west, et cetera, breaking down teams, their records, and a little surprise twist here at the end as well, too, that we didn't do last year as well. So that's what we're going to be getting into today. I can't wait as well. And at the very end of it, we're going to do our playoffs, Super Bowl, and awards predictions, too, right before kickoff to the NFL regular season. I, for one, cannot wait. And you know what, Kelsey? With all the drama, we'll call it, that has circulated the last few days as well, too, a lot of headlines, a lot of things still to come as well, too. I think it's safe to say we're going to start with the North this time as well, too. We're going to determine who will be the kings of the North.
Second season in a row where Deshaun Watson has determined where and when we pick each division. Because last season it was where's he going to end up at? Turns out nowhere. This season, well, what's going to happen? Is he going to get suspended? And we kind of made our predictions based off of the 4 to 6 games going into it. And, well, guess we're like, hey, so far we're right, but we might be wrong here very soon. Who knows? This is crazy.
There's a lot, especially with the word that the NFL might appeal, which could lead to a lawsuit. And there's a whole lot of things, which there are a lot of other Belly Up podcasts that are going in depth on that as well, too. Yeah. So I definitely recommend looking into those. We're gonna bypass, I'd say. We're gonna focus on our predictions and leading into that as well, too. Before we get into that, we of course want to give a big shout out to a couple of our very sponsors that are very fortunate enough to be partnered with us that we very much appreciate. Dr. Squatch, smell like a man, feel like a champion. Basically everything you want for you or that special someone in your life. Smell great without all the harsh chemicals on your skin as well, too. Take back the shower. And, of course, let's not forget our good friends at In the Clutch Sports Apparel. All the high-quality sports gear you need from an unconventional source as well, too. Click the link in our bio. Use code HILOSports. Get yourself a little discount and some stand out from the crowd with your high-quality sports apparel, too. So just want to give them a quick shout-out because we always appreciate working with them as well.
And if you have a favorite player or you just happen to be a Shohei Ohtani fan, if you're a baseball fan, they have the apparel for you? I can't get over the fact they have 18 pages dedicated to Shohei Ohtani. It's insane. No other player has more than 2, but Shohei Ohtani is 18 pages. So if you guys are a big fan of baseball or individual players by themselves, check that out.
Absolutely, definitely don't want to miss that. But it's time to get into our predictions. We're going to start with the North, and we're going to rip this Band-Aid off. We're going to go with the AFC North, our predictions, what we expect, how we see the season playing out. How we did this is we went into the NFL week-by-week predictor, and we went through all 18 weeks, and we predict who we thought we were going to win, who we thought was going to lose, so all the records would line up in some way, shape, or form, and then wrote down the math at the end. And we had some that surprised us as well, too, at the end of it. I know there was a couple we were like, wait, how did we get here? What's going on here? This is an unusual one as well, too. So definitely looking forward to seeing what some of our predictions are. And Kelsey, would you like to do us the honors? Or would you like me to rip this Band-Aid off first?
You know what? I'm gonna take the first. You know what? It's AFC North. I'll take the AFC North.
Okay, cool. So we'll have you work from the bottom up on us as well, too. Let's hear how this is gonna go. Give us the team and their prediction and why you think they'll be that way.
Well, I figure I'll take the lead here, because I can get a head start running with my number 4 here. I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna rip the Band-Aid off, and Steelers Nation. I'm sorry, but sitting at number 4 in the division is you. And I think Steelers fans kind of expect a down season. I don't think they expect to go 3-14, which is where I have them. I just don't trust the Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett situation at quarterback because there's a lot of aspects. Deontay Johnson's still holding out. Like, what's going to happen with that? Look, Najee Harris, I love Najee Harris. But I still can't get behind the fact that they didn't really do anything to shore up their offensive line for whatever quarterback's coming in. And then you gave Minka a contract extension. Thank you. But I still don't trust this defense enough beyond TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick. Like, you lose secondary pieces and you don't replace them. What are you going to do there? Like, you lose DBs. What are you doing? I have so many questions for the Steelers teams, but mostly on their offense. Can they score enough points to keep up with anybody? Because their defense will give up big plays because right now their DBs aren't great. I think everybody can agree there. And it's going to be tough. I'll be don't get me wrong. I'm not the biggest Steelers fan in the world, but I will say this. It's always a tough season to watch when Steelers are not a good team. And on top of everything, you now have the new stupid stadium name.
It's Heinz Field. I'm not calling anything else. Just like it's still Staples. Yeah. We ain't changing.
Exactly. So I have them going 3-14, but I think the biggest fault is that they cannot win a game in their division. When I had them going through the records, I had them 0-6 in division, which is going to be a tough pill to swallow for the quote unquote big brother of the AFC North. So that's why I have the Steelers. I just figured I'd rip the Band-Aid off now. And you know what? If you're going to yell at me, people, comments are right there.
You know, I'm sure there will be somebody that will have a few words for you as well, too. And I will say, I do expect them to have a down year as well, too. What I'm curious to see is you have two younger, more mobile quarterbacks, but at the same time, like Ben Roethlisberger, what we knew was a statue at best in his last couple of years. But he got the ball out of his hands as soon as he caught the ball. I'm wondering if there's a trade-off there, like the mobility evades some of those sacks he took, but at the same time holding the ball. I'm wondering which way it leans as well, too, because if Pickett and Trubisky can evade some of those sacks and maybe keep some of those things going and not catch and throw a quick slant or swing pass every single play, maybe it opens things up. But like you said, there's a lot of question marks that more for the Steelers than I can remember in recent memory. And that was even last year. We were kind of curious how well they were going to do as well, too. And they surprised everybody and somehow got in the playoffs again. But this year it's getting even tougher.
Yeah. And you know, you mentioned Mitch, and we've seen Mitch Trubisky without an offensive line before. It's not pretty. And the fact is, he just doesn't. I feel like, and obviously Kenny Pickett, we don't know what he can do in the NFL. We know what he did in college, and he did hold the ball a lot more in college. He wasn't a quick throwing offense at Pitt. So it is going to be something that happens with development, but I think throwing these, no matter which quarterback you throw out there, I think there's going to be a situation out there that's not going to be good. It's just going to be like, well, crap, guys, try to survive in the 2 seconds to hand it to Najee. Najee, go get us 200 all-purpose yards is the best opportunity we're going to have. Like, I feel like that's what's going to happen.
By the way, Najee, you have to do that per week, and it still might not be enough, depending. So
yeah, exactly. Like he'll have to be basically a 2,000 rusher, 2,000 receiver, just to have an opportunity for like the Steelers to really show out. And it sucks because like guys like Pat Freiermuth are going to be overlooked. You know, you have a lot of talent there that are in the receiving core as well. But with Deontay Johnson holding out, that's your number one. Like that hurts. So
that's going to be tough as well too. So tough times in the Steel City right now. Yeah. So moving on from number 4, who are we looking at number 3?
So number 3, we just talked about him in the intro. The Browns. I have the Browns at number 3, but it's not like it's a bad number 3. They have a competition. They almost sneak themselves into the playoffs here. Unfortunately, they start the 6-6. They set the 6-game suspension off 3-3. That's where I have the biggest fault for the Browns. Jacoby Brissett's only able to lead them to 3 victories. They lose to the Jets, which is the big deciding factor that keeps them out of the playoffs. You lose to the Chargers and you lose to the Patriots. You're able to pick up 3 other wins in there, and you have the bye week in your first 6 games in the first like couple weeks there. But you know, it's just not. It's going to be tough. Like this offense is going to be carried by Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. We all know that. David Njoku obviously is going to pick up a lot of targets. Amari Cooper, can he stay in games? Is a big question. What's it look like between Amari Cooper and Jacoby Brissett as far as a connection? Because Jacoby Brissett never really connected with his receivers in Indy before. But he didn't really have the opportunity because there weren't a lot of healthy receivers. I mean, to be fair. But at the same time, Amari has that tendency to fade in and out of games. That also includes Anthony Schwartz. That includes, you know, Donovan Peoples-Jones. So you got really look at David Njoku. You look at Harrison Bryant as the opportunities for Jacoby Brissett to really stretch that passing game comfortably within himself. And then it's going to be a lot of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. And eventually that's going to get stopped. And that's what I see those 3 losses happening in that 6-6 in that 6-game period there with the suspensions. But I do have them rallying. they end up going 5-1 in the division.
Okay.
So it's not like this is a team that's out of it by any means. They look good when, especially when everybody gets back on the team. It's a matter of this defense is still good, but the offense again doesn't have enough firepower to really get them over the hump. I see them starting under. So I do have the Browns here, but it's not like this isn't like the Browns I've said like that finishes 3rd or 4th in the division of old. Like this is a Browns team that looks really good going forward.
So basically, if they're the NFC, they go like 12-5 and run away with a top 2 or 3 seed, probably.
If they're in the NFC East, they probably win the NFC East 14-3. Like they'd 6-0 in the division. Just it'd be easy. It'd be walk a cake for them right now, but they're not. They're in probably honestly one of the toughest divisions in football. Like this AFC North is just as bad as the AFC West in a lot of ways.
My one question for you before I let you move on, though, is you have them kind of rallying 5-1 in the division down the stretch almost. So does that mean like next year's Browns, you have them being a dangerous force to work with now that they'll have an offseason to kind of get cohesive and a season under their belt, and a lot of the players will be returning too?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's like, so for example, their last 6 games, I mean, you're exactly right. Their last 6 games, they went 5-1. Lost only to the Bengals is what I had them predicting. But like, here's the biggest problem that the Browns have is that middle stretch of their series of their schedule. After the Patriots in week 6, you got the Ravens, then you have the Bengals, and then you have a bye week. Then you have the Dolphins and Bills and the Bucks back to back to back. It's just like that's a tough stretch to run this season. So going into next season, that's going to be like that murderer's row everybody runs through before they have a great season. Like Kansas City had that with Patty, before he led them to a Super Bowl that year before that last stretch. Granted, they still did good.
Mm-hmm.
It just was a murderer's row of quarterbacks he had to face. It's kind of going to be something similar. That's not going to be necessarily quarterbacks for the Browns. It's going to be just teams in general that are strong in my eyes that they're going to be facing in that middle stretch. So, yeah, look out for the Browns next year. And I feel like every Browns fans out there, like, it's always our year next year. Don't stop saying that. Like, no, legitimately, actually, look out for the Browns next year because depending on what happens with the situation with Deshaun, he should potentially be a starting quarterback next year. We'll obviously have to wait and see. Obviously, all that stuff will play out its own self. But when it does, if it does, however it does, they're going to be set up for success next season. Even if it's Jacoby Brissett running the offense, it'll still work out. So there's a lot of opportunity there for the Browns, whether it's whoever starting quarterback going forward.
Absolutely. And they got one of the deepest backfields, as you mentioned, too. Not just those two, but you got guys like Felton. And, like, it's a deep backfield. If worst comes worst, just run 4 running backs at a time and see what you can pull off with that. Like, there's a lot of things to like about this Browns team as well, too. If only they, like you mentioned, put them in the NFC East, they're probably a potential number 1 seed, even with the potential suspension looming. So there's a lot to like about them but still even more question marks as well, too. So moving on now from the Browns, I'm curious now who you have at 1 and 2. I'm curious what order you went in and how this one plays out as well, too, because the Browns, they made a ferocious run there at the end, how you have it. So these 2 teams I expect a lot out of.
Yeah, so number 2, I have the Ravens. And I have the Ravens going 11-6. And the biggest reason the Ravens don't finish any higher, 2-4 in their division.
Wow, so you're saying they could beat everybody except their own kinsmen, basically.
Exactly. And if you look at this team, it's built very well. There's safeties. Obviously, I'm a big Kyle Hamilton fan, so obviously I'm gonna talk about that. But you also look at just everything offensively. It looks good, but you've had 2 off seasons now where your star quarterback has publicly said WTF to his own franchise when they're making a move. And that doesn't always bode well. And that kind of does worry me. Now, with that said, I have them starting out the season 3-0. And then they lose to the Bills and the Bengals. But then they get back on top of things. Their victories as far as in division, if I'm looking at this correctly, it does come against the Steelers both times. That's who they beat. They can't beat the Browns. They can't beat the Bengals. The biggest reason why is I think those wide receiving cores for the Bengals is too deep for the corners sitting there for the Ravens, whereas the running backs are too deep for the Ravens to be able to stick with. And also, let's just also not forget Joe Burrow against the Ravens is just an absolute monster. Is why I have him beating the Ravens twice here. But yeah, so Ravens 11-6. They have a strong roster. They have everybody's coming back healthy. I just still kind of worry about that Lamar Jackson interaction with the front office now. It's not the same old have fun Ravens. It's just this is a different Ravens organization, and that does worry me a little bit. Just because as a Lamar fan, as somebody who hopes for Lamar to get the credibility that he is well deserving of, like he needs to have a big season. He has the weapons with Mark Andrews. I do think their backup tight end there, a kid out of Iowa State, and Charlie Kohler might be a guy that steps up. Rashad Bateman obviously coming in. J.K. Dobbins, again, I cannot state how when he's healthy, this offense runs so much better. Offensive line looks great. Like all the pieces are there, but can they put it together? This is kind of going to be the last question. And I just don't have them put together in division, but I do have them making the playoffs. 11-6, you make the playoffs, you do get to do some work in the playoffs. And I do think that's a potential possibility. And if they put it together and this team gets hot down the stretch, you just have to get hot at the right time in the NFL. So it doesn't matter where you finish as long as you make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's what you basically have old Browns just surviving the new Browns as well too, with just getting past them by the slimmest of margins and clinching themselves a playoff spot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's going to take me to number one. And Oz, as honestly as if you guys have been keeping up, it's the Bengals. Yes, I am a Bengals fanboy. Yes, I do love me some T. Higgins. Yes, I do love me some Joe B. Yes, I do love what Jamar Chase and Logan Wilson can do on the field. They got rid of C.J. Uzomah. All right, that's cool. You replace him actually with a better blocker in Hayden Hurst. Little less fine-tuned route running, but he has great hands. Hayden Hurst can catch. Yeah, he is very quick, but he does have probably safer hands than C.J. Uzomah, which is something that, you miss out on the 6'7" target with C.J. Uzomah, but it's okay because you still have T. Higgins out there. Like, he can still go up and get those. Like, Hayden Hurst is still 6'4". It's not like he's a slouch by any means. So that offense looks good. And honestly, that offensive line, you cannot tell me there's been a better improved offensive line from anything we've seen from last season to this season. This has been the best, deepest revamp I think I've seen because they didn't just go first string deep. They went second string deep in replacing a lot of guys. And that's fantastic. So you should see a lot of blocking for Joe Burrow, but not just Joe Burrow, but Joe Mixon as well. And, we talk about Joe Mixon. He missed, a game last year because of his chest. First time I think he really missed any time in the NFL, like any substantial time. He's always had nagging injuries, but that was like the first time he was like, okay, yeah, take a seat. And you look at that and you just think about what they could build from that Super Bowl appearance. And I'm doing the no, right? You lose the Super Bowl, you don't end up as a playoff contender, let alone a potential 1 seed. Well, 13-4, I have them going to the playoffs. They are not a 1 seed. With spoiler alert for later, but they are going to the playoffs here. And I have them going back and look, man, I think that offense is great. I think that defense is just continuously getting better as well. I love what Logan Wilson's doing. I love the entire secondary for the Bengals. Their defensive line is getting better and better every year. So I think there's a lot to like in Cincinnati. And most importantly, those white Bengal uniforms are going to be absolutely fantastic every single game they wear them.
Okay, so that's the kicker. You're picking on the uniforms. I got it. But you know what? It's honestly safe that you mentioned that offensive line revamp. Them and what the Chiefs did a couple of years ago are some of the more like teams that were Super Bowl teams completely revamping, not just adding a piece here. Like they flipped it on its head like a rebuilding team were. And it's maybe that's a new norm we start to see as well too, which kudos to both organizations. Keep your franchise quarterback healthy. You got 2 top 5 guys. Keep them that way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, we watched Joe Burrow. I watch TikToks a lot for on football TikTok, and like there's a thing going around with Joe Burrow calling him the slide king. If you don't know what that means, sliding in the pocket, his ability to slide in the pocket and just operate right there in a box and get away from pressure. And I mean, God, he can do it all. Like if he's able to do that with no blocking whatsoever, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see what he can do with just an extra half a second per possession, like per snap, like. Imagine that Super Bowl where Jamar Chase burns Jalen Ramsey, leaves Jalen Ramsey for dead on the ground if Joe Burrow had an extra half second.
I will say I consider him the electric slide king, how he just slides to the left, slides to the right, and gets away from people. Like you have to imagine he's an incredible tap dancer as well, too. Or like those ladder drills, hopscotch, anything like that with footwork. He's good at tennis too. Like I agree with football TikTok on that one. He's got the ultimate footwork inside the pocket.
Yeah, exactly. So just as a recap, my AFC North, it's going to go Steelers at number 4, 3-14. Browns number 3, 10-7. Ravens, number 2, 11-6, making the playoffs at 11-6. The Bengals, 13-4, taking the division, and they're going to finish in the playoff top 4 seeding, obviously, but I won't give away where in the top 4 seeding.
Okay, you know what? I like it. That's a very intriguing. I understand a lot of it as well too. Definitely makes sense. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into my AFC North now predictions as well too. I'm gonna start at the bottom, and we're gonna start in about the exact same spot. I'm gonna have the Steelers at the bottom of the division. I have them a little bit better. I have them at 5-12. I think Mike Tomlin's still a solid coach. TJ Watt's still a top 5-3 defender in the game to maybe top 1 edge 1A or 1B. Minkah Fitzpatrick's a great safety who's always underrated. Cameron Hayward is still a good run stopper, but I think they're going to spend too much time on the field, which I think hurt them in a lot of games last year, but they were able to make up for it because your division wasn't as strong last year with the Ravens and their injuries, the Browns and their issues. The Bengals were very up and down as well too. They obviously got hot down the stretch, but during that mid part, they were a little bit slower. So I think the Steelers, it's going to be similar to last year, but you don't have that 17-year veteran at quarterback as well too. You have a young guy or a rookie. There's going to be some holes there. So I think they'll pull some wins out. I think they'll be close in a lot of games, but it's hard for me to get them too many wins, honestly, especially now that all 3 of these teams in your division, good luck. I mean, I have them going 1-5. I know you had them going 0-6. I have them going 1-5. So that's feels like exponentially better, and it's still not very good. So I think that they're unfortunately a victim of their own surroundings, which they used to dominate this division, or they were always competitive. This one is going to be a lot tougher this year, I think, for them as well too. So I got the Steelers at 5-12 right now at the bottom of the division.
I want to get your opinion on this. What do you think caused this lapse? It feels like in talent for the Steelers right now. Do you think it was holding on to Big Ben this long and kind of keeping him happy, or because like this feels like something that doesn't really happen with the Steelers, where there's just a gap in time that they just forgot to get talent. Like it is what it feels like.
I think they got talent. They just didn't always spread it out in the right way. Like you mentioned, Pat Freiermuth, really talented. Najee Harris, really talented. The problem is when they got those players, they weren't exactly big positions of need. They needed offensive line. They needed some linebacker depth. They needed corner depth. So, and then they traded those picks for Minkah Fitzpatrick, which fantastic pick, by the way. Like he's absolutely fantastic. It's just you haven't got a chance to plug and play. And some of those other key spots as well, too. And I think their coaching has been so good that it's kind of elevated some of that, not just Mike Tomlin as being like the rallying point, but some of their assistant coaches, things like that as well, too. And the way they basically flipped the offense to cover up a lot of those holes, and it kind of extended Big Ben's life. So a little bit yes and a little bit just is bound to happen. I mean, we saw it kind of with the Patriots. You had Bill Belichick in a giant pocketbook that flipped it on its head in a year, where the Steelers haven't quite been able to do that, and trading the draft picks and things like that as well. So I think the talent's there, is just not always in the right spot. So I think they'll need to fill in a few spots to maximize it as well too. And TJ Watt, he's got to stay healthy through. Missed a couple games last year, and he's mostly been an Iron Man, but they've kind of built the team exclusively around him too. So if he's not there, or if he's just taken out of a game for whatever reason, which is very rare, the defense is kind of it's basically a Minkah, please pick right and run from center field to the right spot. There's a lot of limitations. So I think the defense will still be fine, though. I'm just like you. I'm curious what the offense is able to pull off. If it's going to be Najee Harris save us every single game, which I can see him doing it 5 times at most. Yeah. So I'm going to move on now to number 3. And like you, I have the Browns here finishing at 10-7. Very similar. I think they're going to go 3-3 to start. I think that's going to be that one loss is going to be to the Steelers as well too. I think just Jacoby Brissett's a good quarterback, but in these I don't know if I feel like this is the type of game where the Steelers run defense can slow up Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt just a little bit. And then it could put Jacoby in those uncomfortable positions as well too. And I think division games, you'll almost always toss something out, especially early in the season. You kind of toss a lot of things out on paper as well too. It's like when the Colts go to Jacksonville, everything's up in the air at that point. I feel like the Steelers and the Browns could be a lot of the same way. A couple years ago, conventional wisdom, the Steelers blast the Browns in the playoff game. Well, it went the other way. And then last year, in theory, it was like the Browns should beat the Steelers both times. Well, not so much. One of them was the TJ Watt explosion, and one was you couldn't score even after the kicker got hurt. So that's so I'm chalking this one to division game early in the season. You don't have your starting quarterback, so the Steelers will take that one. But I think the Browns, like you, after that middle stretch where it's a little rough, they will find some rallying spots. I don't think they'll go 3-3 in the division. I think they'll split with everybody just because the division is so good. So I think they're going to finish 10-7, kind of like you. I think spoiler, I have them just missing the playoff as basically an 8 seed because of like that one game here, that one game there as well too. So I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be competitive in a lot of games. And depending on how the suspension works out, maybe it switches to like an 11-6, 12-5, depending. It's possible because maybe you could slip by the Patriots with that, but there's a lot of we'll see. So I kind of just stuck in the middle of 10-7 with. So basically, you go 3-3 to start, then you finish 7-4. That's kind of how I've playing out for them. So obviously, they get going down the stretch very similar to what you have.
Yeah, no, it's funny because we both high on the Browns defense, right? But it's that offense that you just kind of will they survive any extended? Like, what happens if the suspension gets extended? Is the big question, right? Like, what happens if it goes to 10 games? Like, what?
What if the appeal goes on a little bit longer, so he plays the first 6, but then he misses that middle chunk or something like that? Like the 6 games gets brought in later because of the appeal process or something. Or what if it's at the back end of the season when you need to get rolling? Like there's so much unknown. So I stuck with the 6-game suspension. Unfortunately, it's going to in this division, that one game here or there will actually end up costing you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly like I said. The same with me with the Jets. Like that loss to the Jets is what cost them that playoff spot. It's like. You beat the Jets, you get the playoff spot. In your case, you beat the Steelers, you get the playoff spot potentially. It's possibly that close. So, all right. So now you got me questioning. Now, did you go the same order as me in the top 2, or did you split it up a little bit? Do you have the Super Bowl, the rating Super Bowl AFC champion up there?
Well, I have them up there in the playoffs, but I have them at number 2, sitting at a very, very solid 12-5, nonetheless, as well too. And it's kind of a lot of the same thing you mentioned. Normally, the Super Bowl loser doesn't bounce back and have an incredible season, but boy, did they upgrade that offensive line so much. I love what they do with the offensive line. They had a pretty good draft too. I mean, they didn't get weaker. I don't think they got any weaker. I think they stayed status quo, maybe even got a little bit better. But I will say that they were a 10-7 division winner, with the rest of the teams kind of falling off, getting injured, COVID, or being their own mess, and they got really hot down the stretch. They got super cooking down the playoffs as well, too. I think they are a better team than last year. I just don't know if the circumstances quite lead them to get cooking quite like that as well, too, if that makes sense. Like, you're 10-7 last year and kind of quote unquote backed into the division win and then went on an epic playoff run. This year you're going 12-5 and you're fantastic. You're a better team. I just think they're going to be fantastic, and I don't think that Super Bowl hangover, quote unquote, is going to hurt them. I just think the AFC is so jacked this year as well, too. Like, while they got a little bit better, some other teams got a lot better as well, too, including a team in their own division, which we already know who it is, who I'm going to talk about in a second, who I think got exponentially better as well. So I think the Bengals will be absolutely fantastic. Basically the same as you do. I just have I'm going 4-2 in the division. And so I think they're going to be fantastic. And they're going to be one that, they're going to be the wild card team. The division leaders are like, do I really have to play them? Do I really have to deal with Joe Burrow right now? Can't I play anybody else? They're going to be fantastic as well, too. And I think they're going to be a tough out.
Here's okay. So we talk about this a lot, and then last season we saw it really with the Bengals really encapsulated. They played in 10 games decided by one possession or less. They won 6 of those 10 games.
You know who else did that in recent memory as well, too? Who even to a bigger substantiation? The 2016 Raiders, who were 7-1 in games decided by 7 points or less, including 2-point conversions again, and Jack Del Rio Riverboat Ron Jr. himself over there. They went on that epic run. Unfortunately, Derek Carr's injury, and then the next year they fell off. Granted, they didn't upgrade like the Bengals did, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was actually what I was kind of thinking with them too, is because they did such a good job upgrading their one major weakness, they're not going to have that fall off of, well, we overachieved this last year, and then you upgraded, so that's why I have them kind of sitting at 12-5, and they probably win a whole lot of other divisions as well too. The only problem is I have one other team in their division that I think is going to be fantastic, though.
And my apologies. Actually, they played in 11 of them last year. But my question was more or less: do you see them continuing that trend of playing close games, or do you see this Bengals team kind of? Yeah.
I'll round it out by saying I think they might not have that same record in close games, but if it's a close game, there's very few guys I want the ball in their hands more than Joey B.
What about Evan McPherson? Cool leg, Evan.
Oh, I'm just thinking in the hands to get Evan McPherson within range too. When you give me both of those guys, I think they're going to be kind of like what you saw with Brady, Vinatieri, Brady, and Gostowski for a while as well too. As far as just keep it within close, and we'll take care of the rest. I think they can do a lot of that as well too. But the nature of their run last year, I think, conduces to what would be a plateauing or a dipping down effect. But because of how much they upgraded, it turns into a bit of a plateau effect, if that makes sense. And they still go 12-5. That's how good this team is and how great they are if they stay healthy. So sounds like I'm insulting them, but it's really a compliment when you break it down all the way.
No, I like it. Obviously, I think those two. Obviously, you mentioned Vinatieri and Brady. That's a very interesting comparison. But okay, so Not necessarily a Brady in his own right, but the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, you have it number one. But go ahead and tell us why. Like, what are the reasons you got the Ravens?
So we got the Ravens. I got them going 13-4, kind of like we have the Bengals doing. I have the Ravens as the second seed in the AFC. So a little spoiler, I think they're going to be a fantastic team.
Wow.
Well, let's also remember last year, before injuries completely ripped their team apart, 6-1, I believe it was, maybe even 7-2, something along those lines. They were absolutely cooking early on as well, too. They were a fantastic team to start. And then injuries completely tore them apart. I look at this team now. You still have Lamar Jackson. If he has to be healthy, and there has to not be too many rifts as well, too. You traded Hollywood Brown, which is kind of an interesting trade as well. So you get a receiver. What do you draft in their place? Kyle Hamilton, your favorite player in the draft, fantastic safety. Tyler Linderbaum, a top 10 quality prospect, now playing center to man that offensive line even more as well, too. With a run-heavy offense, who else do you want leading the way than Tyler Linderbaum as far as this is like when the Chiefs brought in Creed Humphrey last year, sort of feeling to it.
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins is coming back. We forget he was an absolute dog in his first couple before he got hurt. You got experience with Gus Edwards coming back now as well, too. You got Mike Davis you brought in. Receiver, you got Rashard Bateman. You got Devin Duvernay. It's a little thin at receiver corps, where no one's going to argue that. But at the same time, their passing offense doesn't run through their receiving corps. It runs through those tight ends. And this tight end group is probably the best in the game. We look at Mark Andrews, who asserted himself. Top 3-4 tight end, you'd say, in the game right now? He's in that category.
Yeah, easily top five.
Category
easily
with Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller. He's one of those four horsemen, if you will, at this point as well, too. Like, he used to be the first one on the outside. He is sitting at that table now. Yeah. He established it. Nick Boyle, a really good blocking number 2 tight end. Charlie Kolar, who I've been really high on out of Iowa State. In our last episode where we talked about rookies, I have mentioned him a lot. I look at him as almost a Jason Witten 2.0. Nothing athletically impressive, I should say, I guess. Well, he's not like a Noah Fant running a 4.5, not like a Travis Kelce gliding. He's big, and he finds a way to get open. He catches the ball, and he can block as well, too. A big body as well for those multiple tight end sets they thrive in. Plus Isaiah Likely. So you're really 4 deep at start. You have 4 quality starting tight ends.
Who's a burner? Who is an absolute burner, by the way.
You could split him out if you need to. We mentioned Ronnie Stanley, hopefully coming back, and he needs to stay healthy. Zeitler, Linderbaum, they've rebuilt the offensive line pretty well. This defense is where I'm looking at. I'm like, this team could be dangerous defensively. You get Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters, your 2 starting corners back as well, too, who in their own right can be one of the better duos in the game as well. Kyle Hamilton, your boy at safety, he's incredibly limited, but what he does do, he is incredible at. That's how I look at him as well, too. And I think Marcus Williams, the safety from the Saints that they brought in, does everything that Kyle Hamilton really can't do necessarily. So you could kind of you could literally pair them up perfectly. You could not ask for a better matchup when I look at it. Marcus Williams could primarily play that deep center safety, cover 1, cover 3, roam the middle, that sort of thing. Nothing deep over the top. Which means you could put Kyle Hamilton on tight ends where he thrives. You could put him in the box to destroy people, or you could put him as like a run defender and a guy that can just kind of move all over the field and roam. So he's absolutely an incredible fit there as well, too. Then at corner, you added Kyle Fuller as your 3rd corner. So now you're getting depth at corner. You got Jalen Armour Davis as well, too. Chuck Clark, Geno Stone, Patrick Queen in your front 7, Josh Bynes, Calais Campbell, Michael Pierce, Odafe Owe, Justin Houston is still on the team. Like, these are names I'm just going up that are absolutely ridiculous. And I kind of do have to mention as well, too, they do have John Ross, the Michigan linebacker as well, too. And David Ojabo. If he gets on the field this year, we were both really high on David Ojabo. If he can get on the field this year, that is the question. Maybe towards the back end of the season, he really bolsters that pass rush as well. So I think this defense is going to be dangerous. I think the Ravens are going to be a force. I think they're going to bounce back. And I think that run game, that record they broke a couple years ago, I think they're going to be breaking it for rushing again this year in that defense. I look forward to bounce back in a big way.
I tried to overlook the David Ojabo thing. And when I say overlook, I mean, I tried to just kind of like imagine he doesn't play this season. That's where I was. You ruptured Achilles. I like as late as it happened, because it happened in during the combine. So you kind of sit there and you wonder if that's going to affect him long term. And then it's tough because nobody ever knows how those are going to, how you're going to recover. Terrell Suggs, like nobody knew how Terrell Suggs was going to recover from his ruptured Achilles. And then, oh, by the way, I'm going to go and dominate for another like 6 seasons. Oh, okay. And then now, so David Ojabo, who knows if he can get on the field? Just him and then Odafe Owe on the opposite sides are just absolutely deadly. So it'll be interesting to see for sure. But yeah, I like the Ravens pick there at number 1 for your AFC North for sure.
I think they got a nice blend of experience and young guys that'll mix together really well if they can stay healthy. And Kyle Hamilton, we kind of talked about. You're a huge fan of Kyle Hamilton. I think he's awesome in a certain role. I think he is going to have an incredible rookie season because of his situation. And because they're going to look at it, they're not going to ask him to do they're not going to ask him to be Eric Berry or Earl Thomas or any of those type of guys. They're going to look at him like, you're like 86%, 85% of Cam Chancellor. You're like a Roy Williams with the old Cowboy safety. We're going to put you in that role and let you dominate while Marcus Williams hangs out back here and just plays that deep center field, which he thrives at. So this defense is built to be very dangerous, and they need to be when they have to play the Bengals twice a year and the Browns when that offense gets flying as well too. I have the Ravens also going 4-2 in the division. Basically, it's going to be a close, tight division. I think the Ravens, they're going to be really tough. I think Lamar's going to earn a whole lot of money if he doesn't already by the time the season starts.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has that opportunity. All right, so we've done the AFC North. That leads us to the other side of the coin. The I don't want to call it weaker northern division. The completely inadequate northern division, if you want to be completely honest about it. I'm sorry, people. I'm just speaking facts here. Like, if we're comparing AFC to NFC North, AFC North walks the dog with AFC North every single day of the week.
Oh yeah.
But so, anyways, NFC North. I ripped the Band-Aid off of the AFC North, TJ. So I'm gonna let you take the NFC North.
All right, we're just gonna go back to back here. NFC North. I'm gonna start at the bottom. I got the Lions. I got them going 4-13, but I think they're gonna be kind of the opposite of the Bengals. I think they're gonna be in a lot of one possession type games. This is a very, very talented young team. You know, on Hard Knocks, everyone's gonna get exposed to Dan Campbell and the fiery nature he is as well too. I look for the Lions to be incredibly competitive. I think it's going to be a lot of games they should win, but they end up losing, kind of like that Ravens game, ironically, last year, where they should have won that one. It took a 66-yard bomb from Justin Tucker. So I think the Lions their record is not going to be conducive how well they play. And I think they are literally maybe half a draft class away from being like a true wild card contender in the NFC. I think this is their last year of quote unquote mediocrity. If they give everybody one more year after this, they're going to be dangerous next year, I think, as well, too. I think it's a really good team that'll have a bad record, if that makes sense. Like they're going to be really, really good, but the record is not going to show any of it, unfortunately. But people who watch them, they will know.
Yeah, no, that Lions team last year, competitive team all around. Just, you know, we just talked about the Bengals, 11 games, you win a majority of them, you go to the Super Bowl. Lions, you play in a bunch of close games, you lose all of them. This is what happens to you.
And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of in this year as well, too. So I have the Lions at the cellar for now at 4-13, but as promising of a 4-13 as you can honestly get. Number 3, I got another team that I think is going to show a lot of promise, but I think they're still a little bit away. I think the Bears are going to go 6-11, which is not really what you want to see. But when you look at this roster top to bottom, it's a pretty terrible roster. I know they just switched GM and GM, head coach, everything like that, but I don't think they did a great job, honestly, overall. Their defense, they did a pretty okay job. I like Jaquan Brisker. I think Kyler Gordon's a pretty good corner, very similar to like Kyle when they had Kyle Fuller in that 2018 type of defense they had that was good. The problem is you already pissed off Roquan Smith now, your best defender. You traded Khalil Mack. Robert Quinn, he's really good, but he's honest. At this point, you lost Eddie Goldman as well, too. You're losing a lot of pieces, and I don't know if you're supplementing him quite that well on defense. Offensively, half the receivers you brought in are either arrested or like third receivers as well, too. I mean, I like Velus Jones. He's a pretty decent pick, but I don't think they're doing enough to help Justin Fields succeed, if that makes sense. Like Cole Kmet, nice tight end. Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, decent running backs. Offensive line, Tevin Jenkins, your early second-round pick last year, is now taking second-team reps and is potentially on the market as well, too, because I guess they don't like what they're seeing from him. So there's a lot I don't like about the Bears, but I think Justin Fields, I still think he has a very, very promising future. It might not be with the Bears, the way the Bears are doing things. If they could keep him healthy, I like bringing in the Packers quarterback coach as the OC. I already saw they're working on like footwork drills with Justin as far as putting which foot forward so you can catch, snap, throw, like Aaron Rodgers did with Devonta Adams relentlessly, just to get the ball out of your hands and mask that offensive line. So maybe that helps you a little bit, but it's going to be a rough season for the Bears. I think they'll get to the 6 wins, but they got some work in this upcoming offseason to kind of bounce it out, because they didn't do enough this last offseason. I think Justin Fields is going to show a lot of promise, but it's still going to be a rough season, unfortunately. He's going to be a later bloomer than I think. We'll see if the Bears are patient enough to find out.
Yeah, honestly, I feel this. You feel bad for Justin Fields, right? Of all the situations he could have gone to, we said it. This was the absolute worst, especially if they throw him out there against the Browns in the week that they did, because they literally threw this guy out here and it's like, all right, well, we're going to Sam Darnold you. That's literally what we're going to do. You might see ghosts from now on in the rest of your career. And That's no way that somebody who has so much promise as a quarterback should be treated. So it's going to be tough. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Justin Fields can do in year 2, obviously with a new coach and kind of a new look offense as well. But yeah, I mean, I think you're pretty. You might even be a little nice by saying that the roster is not good. It's pretty atrocious.
If you take, it might be a bottom 5 roster in the game, honestly. So we went through and just rated the rosters overall, top to bottom. It might be bottom 5, and I'm curious to see how the coaching staff works. So we thought the same thing about the Eagles last year, but the new coaching staff and the new regime was able to get the most out of certain pieces, and kind of the way they rebuilt the offense to accommodate Jalen Hurts and whatnot. So maybe they could do the same with Justin and get him utilize his skill sets, but we have a lot to see with them. So we'll start cruising. Number 2 now, I have the Minnesota Vikings going at 10-7 and finding their way into the playoffs as well too. I won't spoil where or what seed they get, but they do get themselves into the playoffs as well too. I've been kind of hammering this home with you and I, and now I get to say it. I think the addition of Kevin O'Connell is going to make Kirk Cousins even better as well too. Like not just a numbers hero, but a guy who actually plays up to his numbers in certain spots. Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison, I think are going to get some nice split work. So Dalvin Cook doesn't randomly miss 5 games as he has. I think Justin Jefferson is going to be the leading receiver this year, a la what Cooper Kupp did last year, is maybe not as extreme. I look at KJ Osborne. I think he's going to be a nice weapon that's going to be consistent. You still have Adam Thielen, your favorite receiver out there as well too, And I think the offensive line's a little better. You did a really good job in the draft defensively. Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth with your first 2 picks. That bolsters your secondary that desperately needed it. Still have Harrison Smith, still have Patrick Peterson. They have Danielle Hunter coming back healthy, and Zadarius Smith on the other side as well, too. So I think the defense, weirdly enough, you get rid of Mike Zimmer, defensive coach, but I think the defense is going to be better. So I think they have a lot of promising pieces to chase quarterbacks and to get takeaways. And, of course, Irv Smith at tight end is coming back healthy as well, too. I think he could be a real game breaker in those play actions that you imagine O'Connell's going to bring, those zone reads, those motions. That's the eye candy that lets tight ends slip out the back like Tyler Higbee's done the last 4 years, it feels like. So there's a lot to like about them. So I think the Vikings squeak their way into the playoffs at 10-7. And I think it's going to be a full team effort. And I think Kirk Cousins will be elevated a little bit. I know you're not the highest one on him, and I'm not very high on him either. But I think now having a coaching staff that doesn't blatantly hate him, I think will help and will work with him. I think will elevate him enough, if that makes sense. So his numbers and the play will actually match up. And you won't have the 31st ranked defense this year again.
No, that's all fair. I give you credit for how you broke that down. And
you hate every word.
It's the Kirk Cousins stuff kind of just turns my tummy a little bit. But the Irv Smith part, man, I just want to see Irv Smith healthy for a full season. Like, can I get Irv Smith healthy for a full season? And if so be it, Kirk Cousins is going to become as good as you're saying he is,
which isn't very good, by the way. It's just not losing you the games, basically.
Irv Smith will become a top 10 tight end, like easily, if he is healthy all season and Kirk can play that way. Like it would just be so easy for him to be a top 10 tight end. He's so athletic, so good, with his hands. It's just, we'll have to wait and see. I think that's a big key. And honestly, how Adam Thielen ages. Can Adam Thielen continue to age well? And not just fall off a cliff, because he's yet to fall off a cliff. He's still got, obviously his yardage was down last year, but his touchdowns were up. So if he can continue to age well in this offense, it'll be very interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And by the way, too, just a quick heads up, the NFL is appealing for an indefinite suspension. That would be a minimum of 1 year. That is what the NFL is appealing with the Deshaun Watson thing. So we got a lot to look out for on that one too. So just wanted to retrack on that as we were recording this as well too. That popped up, but I do have the Vikings 10-7. I think Kirk Cousins will give you like that 30 touchdowns, 8 picks like he did last year, but it won't be like skittish, garbage time, useless numbers. They'll actually be productive in ways that win games, if that makes sense as well. So it won't be triple doubles that lead you to the 7th seed or something like that. So I see the Vikings being a very quality level team this year, and that defense I'm excited for too. Number 1, even losing Devontae Adams, I still got the Packers. David Bakhtiari is going to come back. AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones is a dynamic running backfield. Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. He still makes a lot of good things happen. The receiving corps is probably the worst he's ever had. I mean, it's going to be like Christian Watson, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Samari Toure, a bunch of guys that nobody knows in Randall Cobb. So I think it's going to be a lot of scheme fits as well too. It's not going to be pretty, but I think they're going to find a way to go 12-5. I think their defense will be improved as well. Jair Alexander will be healthy. You drafted a whole lot on defense, especially in that first round. So hopefully those guys show up and are ready to go. But I think they're still going to beat up on the NFC North. I have them going 5-1 in the division, splitting with the Vikings. The Vikings will steal one from them like they did last year. I don't think It won't be pretty. It won't be as elegant as the last couple of years of the Packers have been since Matt LaFleur got there, where they're averaging 13 wins. But I think they'll still get to the 12 wins just based on you're really good at a few key positions. A few that, like Rashawn Gary as a pass rusher, Alexander a corner, Aaron Rodgers a quarterback. You're fantastic there. You'll be fine. The running game will get you some things. So give me the Packers at 12-5, the Vikings at 10-6, the Bears at 6-11, and the Lions at 4-13, rounding out the weirdly competitive but not so competitive NFC North.
All right. I respect it. It is I can't disagree with a whole lot of your picks. I mean, I don't like the Lions pick. I don't like the Kirk Cousins conversation, but I can't really hate a lot of what you're saying.
Well, you know what? Take it away, good sir. I look forward to your Kirk Cousins argument as well, too.
So I'm gonna start at number 4. Obviously, for me, sitting at number 4 is actually the team you have at number 3 with the exact same record. I have the Bears at 6-11, finishing number 4 in the division. They actually ended up going
records in that division.
Yeah, so they actually ended up going 2-4 in the division. But I think when it comes down to this division, I think it's down to non-conference opponents, and they play the NFC East. So you feel pretty good about that one if you're an NFC North team. Like you kind of feel pretty good about most of your opponents here. I'm sorry, I think the only team in the NFC East that has a chance to even beat the Bears is the Cowboys, and that's a very close game. I went back and forth on that one. They almost finished 7-11 or 7-10 with that one. But give me the Bears here. Again, everything you said about the Bears is exactly right. They're just not a good team from top to bottom. When you're about to ship out Tevin Jenkins, who was injured last year, and he hadn't had a chance to play for you, and then now you're ready to ship him out with a whole new unit, like that's not good because that dude is an absolute mauler. And if you want your running game to work, you gotta have a mauler on the right side.
I think they should consider putting him at guard if he's still struggling out on that island, but instead they're going to just ship him away. But I think give him a try at guard if they're concerned about him on the edges. Just let him go eat people up the middle.
Yeah, I think the biggest saving grace for the Bears is if that secondary from the Bears, especially Eddie Jackson, can recapture his old form. I think that secondary can be strong enough with all the pieces, all the young players they have there, to carry this team to a couple extra wins that I might not even be predicting. But I do think that this team is pretty well capped at about 6 wins. I feel like that. I think anything more than that is going to be shocking. It's going to be Justin Fields playing out of his mind.
Exactly. So number 4, the Bears at 6-11. So I'm curious now. See, who do you have rolling at number 3?
Number 3, head coach Dan Campbell and these knee-biting Lions. I have at number 3 at 8-9. I think this team is actually like we said last year. They lost a bunch of close games. And this year, I think that team has made steps in the right direction to get over that hump where they won't lose every single close game. They're going to win a couple more. And obviously, we're talking like if they play in 11 close games, they win 5 of them. Like not enough they're going to go to the Super Bowl, but enough that they're going to be competitive. And I actually have them going 3-3 in division, stealing one from everybody. Okay. Yeah, I mean, stealing one from everybody. Sorry, I had to double check that just to make sure. But yeah, no, the Lions look good offensively. They made all the right moves. That team looks good. I think the biggest hole on this team is that linebacking core. If you look at that linebacking core, there's not a whole lot of names that you could name off that linebacking core that you could even think of right now. And it takes me a long time to come up with a starting caliber linebacker on that linebacking core. By the way, the answer is there's not really one.
It's a thing.
If there was another choice, there would be another starter. If that was an option. But the secondary obviously still needs the safeties. I think really needs some help. But I do like their corners. I do think Jared Goff is not the liability most people think. No. I mean, he's just he's an average to slightly above average on a good day NFL quarterback. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody hates that's not something to hate. That's better than Kirk Cousins. But I digress. So I give you the Lions though. I like everything they're doing. I like everything they're building. But I think you're right. That next year, this next draft that they have, if they can pull off exactly what they did this draft, watch out, world, because we're going to watch the
line too is really good.
So they're just the moves they made. It's small moves, very small, underrated moves, and they worked really well so far. Too bad they couldn't do anything for the linebacking core. But that'll take me to number 2, who does have a linebacker in Michael Kendricks, who is a fantastic linebacker, is the Vikings and the defense. Everything about the defense I love, except the aging corner. situation. Like Patrick Peterson is your number one corner. I'm not so happy about. Like, it's not great. Move him to safety. Let him go free reign in the safety. Like, let him have fun. But I don't like him as a number one corner. But the Vikings here at number 2. Oh, sorry, 9-8 at number 2. And I like everything about him except for Kirk Cousins. And that's a whole big thing to not like. I also still don't like that Alexander Madison is a beyond capable back. He is an above average NFL running back when he gets his opportunities statistically. And yet he is still sitting behind Dalvin Cook. Like, either get this man somewhere or get this man some playing time. Take your pick. But something has to happen. And I think to your point, with the new regime coming in, I do think there's going to be an opportunity for Alexander Madison to be used a little more gadgety, which is not a bad thing. Kind of like J.D. McKissick before he got shipped to San Francisco, before the injuries took hold. Like, I think Alexander Madison has that opportunity to be that guy that just kind of breaks this offense in a different level. And obviously, again, we talked when you said the Vikings, I mentioned Adam Thielen, how well he continues to age. He's turned those corners of the end zones. I joke about him sitting on the corner with a 40. He has turned those end zones, the corners of those end zones, into his place. That is where he exists. And you just throw it to the corner, and Adam Thielen's going to bring it down. I don't know what he does, why it's so good. Like, him along the boundaries is exceptional. Justin Jefferson continues to just explode. I don't have him as a number one receiver this coming up year, but I do think he's a top 5 potential receiver easily. Like, if Kirk Cousins gives him just the opportunity, the guy's going to be great. KJ Osborne has to step up. But Irv Smith coming back healthy is a big, huge hit. The offensive line improving as well is a big hit. But there's still not enough Vikings to get beyond that 9-8 record at this point in time because you have Kirk Cousins. I feel like you are forever capped by the Kirk Cousins of average. Like, he is the average of all averages. The definition of average in the dictionary, you will see Kirk Cousins. And it's not good enough. If you want to win titles, if you're in Minnesota, it's not good enough to sustain that. But you know what? They're surviving because they have that big old contract, so they'll do what they can. But yeah, so that's the Vikings, number 2, 9-8. Nobody can tell I'm not the biggest Kirk Cousins fan.
What if Jimmy Garoppolo somehow ends up on the team instead and takes Kirk Cousins' job?
Honestly, I've thought about that, and I honestly think that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for both Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne, for that matter, because Jimmy Garoppolo does not discern who he's throwing the ball to. If they're open, they're open. He's going to throw it to them. Like, that's just it. There will not be a case where he overthrows Emmanuel Sanders because Emmanuel Sanders stops on the route. Let's just say that.
He might underthrow Justin Jefferson by a little bit. That's because he flies away. That's a different type of speed. So definitely similar thoughts on the Vikings and very similar records, but different finale. So we both have the Packers at number 1. What record do you have, Matt, and how do you see them playing out?
So I also have them at 12-5. So a great team, but again, when it comes down to it, they just didn't. It's not like to me, they're not the most overwhelming team in the world. As far as in season goes, as far as non-conference opponents, they lose to the Jets, they lose to the Bucks, they lose to the Bills, they lose to the Rams. Like, they're not the threatening Packers team, and a lot of that comes down to that receiving core. You're relying on Allen Lazard, you're relying on Christian Watson, you're relying on Amari Rodgers, who, by the way, got yelled at for taking a fair catch in practice. Like, you're relying on too many question marks in the receiving core that Aaron Rodgers is temperamental enough with his receiving core. And now you're throwing in a bunch of unknowns into his bag. And this is a recipe to either self-destruct or to excel. I don't know which way it's going to go, and I don't know which way it's going to go per week. I mean, there's going to be some weeks, I imagine he just, like that Jets week, I have him losing to the Jets. I have them exploding, like self-destructing. It just won't work. And I don't know. So there's too many question marks with that receiving core. So I worry about the Packers long-term. There are a lot of great pieces there. We're not going to take away from that, but 12-5, they do make the playoffs. It's obviously no question that they make the playoffs there. But what can they do beyond that? I don't know. And that's going to determine with the receiving core.
They remind me of a point fighter in like a combat sport as well. So like they can beat you on points. It can go all 12 rounds or 5 rounds. Like they'll pick you apart, but you won't be hurt at them. But there's no fear there. It's just can you survive the basic game, I guess, of it as well too. Like, because they don't have like a knockout punch, if that makes sense, or they don't have anything intimidating about them. It's just don't kill yourself against them, basically. So I see what you mean as well too. They'll win games, but they're not scaring like those elite teams.
Exactly. So just to recap, going back over my picks, I have at number 4 in the NFC North, the Bears 6-11. At number 3, the Lions 8-9. At number 2, the Vikings 9-8. And at number 1, the Packers and Aaron Rodgers taking the division at 12-5.
Absolutely. Very, very fun going. We got that as our AFC and NFC North predictions, but we got a fun little twist this year that we haven't had last year. There's a lot of fun talk about sports, betting, that sort of thing as well, too. So this year we're going to break down a fantasy player to watch for each team in each division and a quick 60-second recap per division. Before we get into that, though, we talk fantasy football, we talk sports betting. Survivor pools are definitely a big thing going on right now as well, too. And we are fortunate enough to be partnered up with Run Your Pool. It is an NFL, NBA, any type of sport. You can run a survivor pool through that as well, too. We do have our own survivor pool going on right now. It is free to enter. Go ahead and join ours as well, too. You can win plenty. You can be up and win prizes if you do very well as well, too. And put your sports knowledge to the test and put your cojones on the line depending on who you pick on a certain week as well, too. So follow our social media accounts. We'll have a link up there for you as well, too, to go and join us. We look forward to competing against you, and we'll see who will be on top of that survivor pool. So, Kelsey, I'll let you go first. We'll start with the AFC North. Give me a fantasy player from each team to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, so I'm going to run through this real quick from top to bottom from finishers. So, AFC North, the Bengals. Look out for T. Higgins. You obviously have number 1, Jamar Chase, number 3, Tyler Boyd. What else do you need? You need T. Higgins. The guy has a perfect fit with Joe Burrow. They've had it for 2 seasons now. It's on display every single game last year. Give me T. Higgins there. The Ravens, I have Rashad Bateman coming back healthy. Look, Lamar he's a reluctant throw it, but when he throws it, he needs to have a big body target. Rashad Bateman fits every category that Lamar wants, including speed. He's just a little smaller than Mark Andrews, but he will be outside the numbers. He will be that guy making big plays in that receiving core. For the Browns, I actually going out on a limb here and sticking with the slot receiver with Anthony Schwartz, who we missed last season because on and off with injury. I think this season, between Jacoby Brissett's rocket arm and Deshaun Watson, if he comes in and plays it all, I think Anthony Schwartz, after he's learned this offense, has the opportunity to be an explosive player because there's not a whole lot of explosion left in this offense. And number 4, the Steelers, sticking with the receiver core, going with George Pickens here out of Georgia. He's been looking fantastic in preseason practices. He's been looking fantastic on the ball, off the ball, blocking, you name it. I look forward to seeing what he does. And with Deontay Johnson sitting out, there's room. So that's my 4.
There's room to cook. So I'm going to go with my AFC North. I got Charlie Kolar from the Ravens. Big tight end opposite Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews getting double teamed. Charlie Kolar run 7 yards, turn around, easy catches with him and Lamar all day moving the chains. For the Bengals, I'm not actually looking at the offense. I'm looking at that defense. I think that defense is going to be very underratedly good, kind of like when they got hot last year. And I see if you miss out on some of those elite defenses in fantasy, maybe you pick up the Bengals really, really late, and they can help you with a few games as well, too. So look for them to be an underrated good defense. For the Browns, I'm looking at Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper can have a bit of a bounce back year this year. The primary receiver used a route running, like what Jarvis Landry type of role was as well, too, where they exemplify his skill set. And it's not the Cowboys offense continue to veer away from him. I think the Browns offense will veer into him, if that makes sense, for better and for worse. And then the Steelers, not even sugarcoating. If you have a top 3 or 4 pick, Najee Harris is your guy. There's not a whole lot else on that offense. Even if he doesn't get a lot for the rushing because of the O-line, he's going to get a lot of passes like he did last year. Najee Harris is my guy for the Steelers, and those are my AFC North fantasy players to look out for.
I like it. Well, I'm going to jump right over to the NFC. We're going to run through this real quick. The NFC North, I got Packers. Can he come back healthy? Christian Watson, if he can. I do think he has the opportunity to be that guy that steps up for Aaron Rodgers. Becomes the next Devontae, maybe. The Vikings, I said it when I broke them down. KJ Osborne, I need you this season if these Vikings are going to succeed. And I think he has the opportunity. He showed it burst last year. I think this time he's going to show it sustaining through at least 7 games. The Lions, coming back off the injury out of the out of his playoff run. Jamison Williams, the rookie, I think he's been he is fantastic. He is lightning in a bottle. Comes back, if he come back 100%, don't rush it back. Absolutely fantastic rookie there. Now the Bears, it's not a whole lot to love there with the Bears, but there is a guy, safety net for Justin Fields. Showed a lot last year. This year he's going to get even better, going to be seeing even more targets, probably going to be number 2 targeted in the receiving core. Even though he's not a receiver, it's Cole Kmet.
I like it. You can't go wrong with those. I'll cruise through mine too. Packers, I'm looking at A.J. Dillon, the touchdown vulture from all Aaron Jones holders, and I think Aaron Jones will be used to passing more, which means more carries for A.J. Dillon as well. Vikings, this is similar to the Steelers. Don't overthink it. Justin Jefferson, I still think he's going to be the leading receiver in the league if he stays healthy. If you miss out on those elite 2 or 3 running backs, but you still pick early, don't be afraid to take Justin Jefferson like you would take Devontae Adams or D-Hop the last few years. For the Bears, I think Khalil Herbert is going to get a lot of underrated burn in a similar way that A.J. Dillon has. He's a very evasive, fast-moving back that can catch the ball, get him in space. Then for the Lions, I'm looking at DJ Shark coming back off an injury. Jamison Williams is going to scare people with his speed. So I think DJ Shark's going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities to get deep, and Jared Goff throws a nice deep ball. So look for DJ Shark as an underrated receiver 3 slot type of guy, or flex type of guy too.
I like him. So that's our guys to look out for fantasy coming for both of these divisions. Real quick rundown. You'll see those on our social medias as well. If you missed all those and those quick breakdowns, we'll have them up on our socials. Don't worry. But guys, we appreciate everything as always. Run your pool. Link will be in our bio right below us. Check it out. Join us today. You have a chance to win some cool prizes as well. DJ, any final words?
Nothing for me. Come back again next week. So for the next few weeks, we'll be doing division by division breakdowns. Next week, I think we're going to head on over to the East and check out the AFC and the NFC East next. But I think that'll be a fun way to go next. So join us next week for another fun episode as well too. And until